Hi, I'm Brickroad. I don't do top whatever videos. I tend to not play most new releases while they're new, so a lot of games I'll end up loving from 2016 won't actually make it on my plate until 2019 or whatever. I'm still going to share my top 5, but only with this disclaimer. I'll have to take some time out of my top 2017 video to give some love to this year's games that I missed. This would be a top 10 video instead, but I only played 10 new releases in 2016, and I can't unreservedly recommend all of them. I'd like to talk briefly about the 5 I didn't pick, but before we get to them I have 2 honorable mentions I want to point at first. Honorable mention number 1 is Rise of the Tomb Raider. This was technically a 2015 release, but it was an Xbox One exclusive until 2016, so take that for what it's worth. I love the new Tomb Raider games, and I think this one is better than the first. It fixed some issues I had with the original, opened up the world a bit, and gave me an excuse to spend another 10 hours or so with Lara Croft, one of the best characters in modern gaming. I don't play a lot of modern third-person action-adventure games, so these Tomb Raider titles feel really fresh and exciting to me. Your mileage may vary if your gaming diet is different from mine. Honorable mention number 2 is Planet Coaster, a 2016 release I've been anticipating for over a year, but just haven't gotten around to yet. I'm a huge Roller Coaster Tycoon fanboy from back in the day. In some ways, they're the only simulation games that have ever really clicked with me. I'm certain I'll be putting 100 hours into this game early in 2017, and for now it's my go-to for Twitch and YouTube viewing, so I'm giving it an honorary spot on this list. Now let's look at the games I played this year that didn't make top 5. These are in no particular order. First is Enter the Gungeon. I spent about 2 hours with this game and I hated practically every second of it. It's a roguelite, bullet-hell dungeon hack game which, to its credit, is really fun to watch. The game looks great and you really can't beat that title screen music, but I found the game to be too punishing and wasn't encouraged to sink enough time in to get good. I know a lot of people love this game, and if you think it looks fun, you should maybe grab it on Steam sale, but when I feel like scratching my roguelite itch, I'm going to reach back for Binding of Isaac or Risk of Rain. Next up is Arafel, a JRPG available on Steam, made by a buddy of mine in RPG Maker 2003. I enjoyed this game, but only with an asterisk. Being an old school RPG Maker dude myself, I'm already used to the foibles of the software. I can look past a lot of the game's faults and be impressed by what I know to be bits of technical genius, but if I were just a regular Joe trolling around Steam, I'd have to admit the game is clunky and glitchy, and while that's not the developer's fault, it's still an issue with the end product. It's a cute game with fun characters, and the gameplay is really as good as it can be, but the fact remains the developer started out with one hand tied behind his back. As RPG Maker games go, I still think it's one of the best ones available. Next is It'll Do 2, and I was really disappointed with this one. The original It'll Do is a fantastic indie Zelda clone with a bit of exploration, a bit of non-linearity, and a bit of devilish puzzle design. I'd say It'll Do 2 has about the same amount of creativity on display. The problem is the game is at least 5 times larger. That means there's a lot of padding, and most of that padding comes in the form of terrible combat. I liked the game when it was on point, but so little of it was on point that I can't recommend it. I'd rather replay the original and dream of what might have been. Next is I Am Setsuna, a JRPG released by Square Enix that apes a lot of its combat and party mechanics from Chrono Trigger. I'd say it succeeds on that point, but flubs everything else. Chrono Trigger has sharp, colorful graphics, an unforgettable soundtrack, terrific punchy dialogue, and a wonderfully diverse setting. Setsuna has none of that. The battle system feels really good after you get the hang of it, and each character has mountains of techs and equipment to play around with. If that's all you need from a JRPG, you'll probably like this game. Otherwise, it's bog standard anime drudgery, and I doubt I'll ever go back to it. Finally, there's Stardew Valley. I don't get it. I just don't get it. This is Checklists the game. You fill out checklists to unlock more checklists, and as far as I can tell, you do that until the heat death of the universe. People love these kinds of games, but I just don't. Checklists are fine when there's some underlying goal or challenge, but in Stardew Valley, there's nothing underneath. I don't need to recommend this game, because if you dig on some Harvest Moon or Animal Crossing, you already have it in your library and are currently scrolling down to leave me a mean comment, so I'm gonna quickly distract you with this picture of a honey badger and then move on to my real top 5. Number 5 is Superhot, the first-person shooter that isn't a first-person shooter. The gimmick here is that time only moves when you do, whether it's running or jumping or pulling a trigger. Looking around is a free action, and so the whole game is about carefully planning your next move and then executing it. That makes it a kind of turn-based first-person puzzle shooter. I wasn't enamored with the silly metagame stuff, but the actual levels were all terrific. I remember the controller support being bad, but I replayed it recently and it felt fine, so maybe they patched it or something. The game's pretty short, but there's a level select, speedrun options, and lots of challenge modes to dig into. If you grab it on sale, you'll get a lot of bang for your buck on this one. Number 4 is Shantae, Half-Genie Hero. It might just be that the game is still in its honeymoon period, but I'm pretty sure this will end up being my favorite game in the series. The move away from a Metroidvania style to a more traditional level-based structure was a smart play. All the levels are tight, polished, and action-packed. There are still a lot of hidden items to sniff out, so the game overall feels like an early Mega Man X title. Every time you get a new power-up, you'll want to replay all the old levels to see what new trouble you can get into. It's just a joy to play, and there's a new player character coming out soon, so I see myself revisiting this one a lot in the coming months. Number 3 is a game Nintendo would really rather I not talk about, AM2R, Return of Samus. This is a fan-made remake of the first Game Boy sequel to Metroid, and a project the fanbase has been clamoring for ever since Metroid Zero Mission. AM2R is made by someone who really understands what makes the 2D Metroid games special, and also what areas of those games could be improved with small quality of life changes. I was really bummed when Nintendo brought the hammer down on this project. Instead, they should have hired this guy as lead designer for any new Metroid projects, and put AM2R up as a $20 download on their eShop. This game is a masterpiece, pure and simple, and it's my favorite platformer since Shovel Knight. Number 2 won't come as a shock to anyone who's been watching my streams lately. Final Fantasy XV. This game far surpassed all of my expectations. I instantly took to the real-time combat and quickly felt comfortable with all the game systems. Final Fantasy games have a bad habit of being overcomplicated in terms of what you can do and how you can do it, but 15 is nice and streamlined. The 4 main characters have a great charisma together, and the story was actually fairly engaging. The game is open world, but not so open that I became bored with it, and as the cherry on top, this game features the single most ingenious JRPG dungeon I've played in years. I'm already itching to replay this one. And now number 1, my game of the year for 2016, Obduction. In one sentence, Obduction is the spiritual successor to Riven. It's a gorgeous adventure game where you explore several fantastic but logically consistent puzzle worlds. The ways these worlds interconnect and the ways you're able to interact with those connections kept on surprising me as I played. Every puzzle in the game is expertly designed and fairly clued. There's no moon logic or pixel hunting required. I played the game with a friend, and that's exactly how I recommend you play it too. The game was poorly optimized at launch, but most of those issues got fixed pretty quickly. I know in 2017 I'll play another good FPS, and another good platformer, and another good JRPG, but it'll be a long wait for the next game that fills Obduction's niche. That wraps up my 2016 countdown. If you think I missed anything obvious, feel free to yell at me in the comments, or just to let me know what you thought the best games were this year. If you liked the video and want to see more like it, please consider checking me out on Patreon. I look forward to playing more awesome games with you guys in 2017, and thank you very much for watching.